What if the man who spent his entire life mocking pregnant women woke up one morning with a baby growing inside him? Not for a day, not for 2 days, but for an entire week. At first, the villagers laughed. Then they became afraid because every night, someone heard a baby crying from inside his stomach. And on the 7th day, whole village gathered to witness something that had never happened before. A man was about to give birth, but nobody knew that what was growing inside him was far more terrifying than a child. This is the story of the pregnant man. In the ancient village of Umudara, there lived a man named Nnamdi. Nnamdi was wealthy, respected, and strong. He owned large farms. He owned goats. He owned cows. Whenever disputes arose among villagers, his opinion mattered. But despite all his success, Nnamdi had one terrible habit. He enjoyed laughing at other people's suffering, especially pregnant women. Whenever he saw a pregnant woman walking slowly, he would laugh. Whenever a woman complained about back pain, he would mock her. Whenever husbands carried loads for their pregnant wives, he would shake his head and call them weak. All this because of a small baby. He would say, "These women behave as if they are carrying mountains." The men around him would laugh. The women would quietly walk away, but deep inside, many of them hated him. One afternoon, during the dry season, the sun burned fiercely above the village. A pregnant woman named Ada was returning from the stream. She carried a heavy pot of water on her head. Her swollen stomach made every step difficult. Sweat ran down her face. She looked exhausted. As fate would have it, she crossed paths with Nnamdi. The moment he saw her struggling, he burst into laughter. "Ladies and gentlemen," he shouted, "look at this woman." Villagers stopped to watch. Nnamdi pointed at Ada. "She walks like a goat carrying yams." Laughter erupted. Ada stopped. Her face hardened. She slowly lowered the water pot. The crowd became silent. Then she spoke. "You laugh because you do not understand." Nnamdi smirked. "I understand enough," he said. Ada stared directly into his eyes. For a moment, something strange happened. The wind stopped. The leaves became still. Even the birds fell silent. Then she said quietly, "I wish you could become pregnant for just one day." The crowd gasped. Nnamdi laughed so hard he nearly fell over. "Me?" He slapped his chest. "Pregnant?" More laughter followed. Ada picked up her water and continued walking. Nnamdi spent the rest of the day mocking her words. That night, he slept peacefully, or so he thought. Around midnight, he had a dream. In the dream, he stood alone inside a dark forest. A baby was crying somewhere nearby. He followed the sound. The crying grew louder and louder and louder until it seemed to come from inside his own body. He woke up sweating. His heart pounded. The crying vanished. He convinced himself it was only a dream. Then morning came and the impossible happened. Nnamdi screamed. The entire compound rushed outside. His servant froze. His relatives stared in disbelief. His stomach had grown. Not slightly, not a little. His belly now looked exactly like that of a pregnant woman. The news spread through Umudara like wildfire. People abandoned their farms. Women left their cooking pots. Children ran through the streets shouting, "Nnamdi is pregnant! Nnamdi is pregnant!" By noon, the entire village had gathered outside his compound. Some laughed, some prayed, some were terrified. The village healer was summoned immediately. He examined Nnamdi. He checked his pulse. He touched the swollen stomach. Then his face turned pale. "I do not understand this." The crowd became restless. The healer had never failed before. If he did not understand it, then something supernatural was involved. That night, Nnamdi felt the first pain. A sharp pain shot through his back, then another, then another. By midnight, he was screaming. He could not sleep. He could not sit. He could not stand comfortably. The next morning, the swelling became larger, and then something even stranger happened. Something moved inside him. At first, he thought it was his imaginations. Then it happened again. A kick. Nnamdi froze. Another kick. The crowd watching outside heard him scream. For the first time in his life, real fear entered his heart. Days passed. The pregnancy continued growing. His feet swelled. His appetite changed. Sometimes he craved food he had always hated. Sometimes he cried for no reason. The villagers who once feared him now mocked him openly. Children followed him through the streets. Pregnant women laughed whenever he struggled to walk. The same humiliation he had given others returned to him 10 times over. By the 4th day, something terrifying began. Every night, villagers heard a baby crying. Not outside, not in the forest, inside Nnamdi's stomach. The cries echoed through the darkness. Women covered their mouths in fear. Men locked their doors. Nobody slept. The entire village became terrified of whatever was growing inside him. Then came the 5th day. A traveling diviner arrived in Umudara. He was old, blind in one eye, and feared across many kingdoms. When he heard about Nnamdi, he demanded to examine him. The villagers gathered. The diviner placed both hands on Nnamdi's stomach. Suddenly, he jerked backward. His walking stick fell. Fear filled his face. The crowd gasped. "What did you see?" the chief asked. The old man remained silent. "What did you see?" the chief repeated. The diviner finally spoke, and his words froze everyone's blood. "This is no ordinary child." The crowd exploded into panic. Women screamed. Men stepped back. The chief ordered silence. The diviner continued. "What grows inside him carries the weight of many tears." Nobody understood what he meant, not even Nnamdi. But from that moment onward, fear consumed the village. On the 6th night, the dreams returned. This night, Nnamdi saw hundreds of women standing in darkness. Some were pregnant, some cried silently, others stared at him without speaking. Then he noticed something horrifying. Every face belonged to someone he had mocked. One by one, they pointed towards his stomach. Then they disappeared. Nnamdi woke up screaming. Outside, thunder shook the sky. Lightning split the darkness. And for the first time since the nightmare began, he cried. Not from pain, but from regret. He remembered every cruel joke, every insult, every person he had humiliated. By dawn, he was no longer the same man. He began apologizing to everyone he had offended. The villagers thought fear had finally broken him, but the truth was different. Understanding had begun to change him. Then came the 7th day, the day nobody would ever forget. Word spread throughout neighboring villages. People traveled for hours. Some climbed trees, others stood on rooftops. The entire village gathered because Nnamdi had gone into labor. The pain was unbearable. He screamed, he rolled on the ground, he begged for mercy. Hours passed, then more hours. Dark clouds gathered overhead. The wind howled through the village. The crying inside his stomach became louder than ever. The entire crowd trembled. The chief priest began praying. Women held their breaths. Children hid behind their parents. Then suddenly, the crying stopped. The wind stopped. The pain stopped. Everything stopped. Nnamdi's stomach collapsed instantly, as though it had never existed. The crowd stared. Nothing emerged. No baby, no blood, nothing, only silence. Everyone looked around in confusion. Then a voice echoed across the gathering. "You finally understand." The villagers turned. Standing beneath a giant iroko tree was Ada, but something was different. Her appearance seemed to glow. The chief stepped forward. Ada, she smiled. Then the impossible happened. Her form began to change. The crowd gasped. Some fell to their knees. Others fled in terror. The woman they knew as Ada slowly transformed into an ancient spirit, a spirit older than the village itself. The spirit looked at Nnamdi. I never came to punish you. Tears filled Nnamdi's eyes. The spirit continued. I came to teach you. Then she pointed towards the crowd. Pain is invisible to those who have never carried it. You laughed at burdens because they were not yours. The spirit's voice softened. So for 7 days, you carried a burden that was. Nnamdi fell to his knees. The spirit smiled. Then she delivered one final shock. The child was never real. The crowd gasped. The crying was the sound of every tear you ignored. The weight was the suffering you mocked. The pain was the pain you refused to understand. Silence filled the entire village. Then the spirit began fading away. Before disappearing completely, she looked at Nnamdi one last time. Remember this, the easiest burden to laugh at is the one you do not carry. And then she vanished forever. Years passed. Nnamdi changed completely. Whenever pregnant women needed help, he was the first to volunteer. Whenever anyone was mocked for their suffering, he defended them. And whenever children asked why he cared so much, he would smile sadly and say, because 1 week taught me what a lifetime never could. And from that day onward, the people of Umudara learned a lesson they never forgot. Never laugh at a pain you have never felt, because the burden that looks light from a distance may be the heaviest burden of all. And that, my friends, is the story of the pregnant man. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please, if you are new to this channel, do well to click the subscribe button. Till our next video, may wisdom guide your paths.